Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Tech Horizons. My name's Mathew Lamont. I'm the Senior Regional Marketing Manager at Procore Technologies, and today I'm joined by Mathew Lamont, Founder and Managing Director of Colain.
Madeline, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you. We've been chatting for a while,
Yep.
Obviously in your previous role and now in your current role as Managing Director of Colain. I'd love to kind of kickstart because I don't want to get too in-depth about where you are now without kind of starting from the very beginning. Could you give me a brief overview of your career to date?
Yeah, sure. I think obviously started in Scotland. I did a degree in civil engineering and I managed to pick up a job with the local enterprise company in Dumfries and Galloway. It was a 12-month graduate training programme. They were trying to get graduates to stay in the region and encourage people back to the area. Anyway, after the 12 months, I then moved back to Glasgow, where I'd done university, and worked with Bovis Programme Management. So I joined them as an assistant project manager. And with them, I was put onto the graduate training scheme for the Institute of Civil Engineers. And that gave me some opportunities to work with the likes of Scott Wilson in the design office, where I did an exchange. And I also did an exchange into Bovis Construction. So I got experience of contracting as well. I did a 2-year stint with Network Rail as well, but went back to Bovis and to the project management team. And after doing some projects there, I managed to secure a transfer out to Dubai in 2007. We had the global financial crisis obviously impacted a lot of us in the region at that time, and unfortunately I was made redundant twice. But in that time I'd found opportunities, one in Abu Dhabi, and then I ended up after a year there being made redundant again, moved back to Scotland and worked with an engineering firm there. And then at that point I actually set up Colain as well as a company to do development. And telling me to do that, I ended up doing part-time work with a small subcontractor and doing civil engineering, and then did my own work with Colain as well. And then I ended up taking a job with Robertson Construction, who's probably the biggest contractor in Scotland, and did one project for them in southwest Scotland. And then moved back out to Dubai. I think we decided we hated the rain and the wind and the cold of Scotland.
I don't blame you.
And decided, move back here. So we came back 2014. I worked with AECOM, and then I moved to Turner & Townsend to support their Dubai project management team. And after 4.5 years with Turner & Townsend, went to Compass as regional director. And that, I think, allowed me to learn a lot more about the ins and outs of operating a PMC firm. And it gave me, I think, enough desire and I think confidence as well to go out and do my own thing, which is what I've always wanted to do. So this year, we've set up Colain. So there's myself and my partner, Stuart Rogers, who have started that project management company off now, based here in Dubai. And that's where we are now. That's my career.
Wow, that is quite diverse, incredibly rich. And, in Scotland, then to Dubai, then back to Scotland, you're now back in Dubai. I'm really interested as well because off camera, we spoke about what got you into doing the degree that you did as well. And I don't want to kind of scoot over that. I'd like to double down on it because I think it's quite an interesting story. You said that it was a psychometric test that basically revealed that you could be aligned to this industry in the first place.
Yeah, it's one of those tests you do when you're choosing your subjects for the first time in school. And I remember going through the test and answering all the questions that you're presented with. And at the time, there was a big printout of, I think, every career you could think of. But civil engineering was actually near the top. And I never knew what civil engineering was, but I did some research. I realised that it was about the built environment. Bridges kind of stood out for me as being something that was quite interesting. And I think I really liked the idea that you didn't have to get stuck in an office all the time either. So there was opportunities to be on site. So I decided to go down the route of civil engineering, and in some respects it kind of followed my father's footsteps. He was a mechanical engineer. So it's kind of, there was definitely some relationship there to what my dad did. But yeah, it ticked the boxes for me at a very early age, and here we are.
Yeah, the rest is history, so they say. And it seems like it was in the blood then, if it was along the same lines as what your father pursued as his own career.
My sister ended up doing engineering as well. So
you're a family of engineers then. I did a psychometric test when I was younger, but it came out that I was meant to be a prison reform officer, and I'm obviously...
Is that not what you're doing now?
No, I would say not. Maybe on some days I feel like, but no, it's great that kind of led the way and was the gateway into this industry, and so great that you've been building upon that with such a variety of experiences.
Yeah.
In terms of the experiences then, because there have been so many, what would you say has been perhaps the most memorable of that?
Do you know, it's interesting. I've worked on some really cool projects, especially here in Dubai. Like you move from Scotland, and whilst I had great opportunities to work on the likes of Scottish Parliament, where you'll never see the level of detail that went into the formwork in that construction. I don't think I'll ever see it again in my career. It was really something to be involved with. And then coming out here to Dubai, worked on big schemes. There was a scheme back in 2008 where Jumeirah Gardens was going to be essentially reforming Satwa. And my team with Bovis Lendlease were brought in. We brought some guys out of retirement who'd worked on Petronas Towers. And that was a great team to work on. And the projects, like we had one project which was going to be a kilometre high tower. Was involved in all of the logistics of that, and managing how we managed to get everyone onto that site, and two towers which are over 100 stories. And then my main focus in that job was Parkgate, which was 6 towers, around about 40 stories each, in a common basement. And yeah, it was fantastic, even working with the likes of Adrian Smith, Gordon Gill Architecture. It was great, and there was lots of challenges, but I actually always go back to my time with Network Rail as probably being the most memorable and fond part of my career, purely because we were running around Scotland on the wee bogies that you've got, where you've got 4 seats and a lawnmower engine, and you're running around in rails. There was one time, and I was the on-call engineer, and as the on-call engineer, you would react to things that might happen. So you might have a bridge strike. An examiner might be out looking at a bridge and discover a problem, and they would say, "Listen, you need to come out." So on this one occasion, I remember it was lunchtime on a Friday, and I remember getting the call on the pager at the time, not the mobile, on the pager saying, "Right, there's a problem," and they'd closed the line just north of the Forth Bridge outside of Edinburgh. And this one viaduct, the Jamestown Viaduct, it was really, really old, but the examiner had found some significant problems in the joints on the steel truss. The viaduct was very high. It was, from memory, at least 10 metres high. And I said, "Well, this is great. How do I come up and look at the problem?" So anyway, so when I left Glasgow, I tasked the team on site with coming up with a solution. I remember arriving there dressed in my suit and being told that I was putting on a harness and they were going to give me a crash course in rope access. Yeah. So here's me having to climb this bridge with ropes to get onto the other side of the track and see the structure. I had the team arranged to come and do repairs. Given the fact that the structure had been okay for probably a year or two since the last examination, we made the decision that we could reopen the line with a speed restriction. And yeah, we managed to instruct the repairs. And then the next thing was me having to try and abseil down, which was, again, a new experience. So
What are you like with heights?
I'm actually okay with heights, thankfully. But yeah,
No vertigo.
But I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that definitely stands out as something really memorable.
Never a dull day in the world of construction.
It was great. Yeah.
In terms of memorable, then, that sounds like it was very fond and it kind of opened your eyes up to maybe the spontaneity, perhaps, of the construction industry. Is there a time that was particularly challenging or you really saw as being perhaps a catalyst for your growth, perhaps?
I would say coming to the Middle East, and at the time, the focus was very much obviously in Dubai with the construction in 2007. For me, that was a huge challenge because you came from a fairly mature construction market in the UK, where procurement was being modernised in terms of how contractors were involved. We were looking at partnering at the time, and then you come here and you're faced with very traditional ways of managing contracts, where every single thing that's done on site is checked. The paperwork is all done around it, and it becomes very arduous to go through that whole process. And also you've got the form of contracts, which are very traditional as well, and there's a lack of trust, and I guess that's where I found it quite difficult to understand how you navigate the construction world. But I quite enjoy contracts, so you kind of use it as a bit of a game. You can enjoy it just to make sure that you get the best for your client at the end of the day, and especially as a PMC, that's your ultimate aim, to protect the client and have the teams that are working for you deliver what they're expected to be delivered. So it was a challenge, definitely coming here, and I guess now after so many years in Dubai, it's became a bit of a norm as well, and you accept it. And I think that's where we need to rely on people coming out to the Middle East from other parts of the world, bringing other practices and best practice over with them. And I guess that's why, like with Colain, we've got a focus just now of looking at the UK to bring out our first 2 recruits. And yeah, for me, hopefully the young blood who know construction, at least from the UK perspective, can have a different eye for how things should be done here.
Absolutely. Pushing the boundaries, I think, by bringing other people on board from different parts of the world so that there can be that knowledge exchange. And we're seeing, I would say, that becoming very effective now within the region when you look at foreign workforce. And I know the recruitment drive within the construction industry and bringing people over from different parts of the world is probably, I would say, most active in this part of the region than in any other part. So.
Yeah, and I think the cultural aspect is something I relish as well, because you can be sitting with so many different nationalities around a table, and you probably become a bit of a psychologist to try and understand how you get the best out of individuals. And depending on where they come from, they react differently to how you treat them, how you instruct them to do things. So you've really got to figure out the best way to communicate with people. And I love that part of being a project manager here in the region, where you're constantly trying to get the best out of a team.
I'd love to double down a little bit more, actually, in terms of the shift that you made when you moved back to the UK and you went from working for somebody else to setting up Colain and that entrepreneurial mindset. Could you explain that transition and how that maybe caused you to look at the industry a little bit differently?
Well, I've always wanted to do something on my own, and I guess even my mother pushed me down the kind of entrepreneurial route, even as an early age. I guess I want to do things differently, and whilst I've always had the desire to run my own business and essentially be my own boss, Clearly, it's very difficult to do that on your own. And one of the other aspects that has probably frustrated me throughout my career as well is that as project managers, we can put a lot of effort into getting a job over the line, but you don't necessarily get the payback as an individual. And that's fairly common within the industry. But there were companies out there who offer employee stock ownership. So when I was setting up Colain, essentially the second time as a new entity here in the UAE, there's been a focus on ownership where every employee that comes in will be given essentially ownership of the company. So it's the move back to the UK definitely kind of pushed me in that direction, because I could see the opportunities, and I just didn't have at the time, I don't know, enough confidence to go into it. I had a young family. In the UK, you've got the mortgage, you've got to pay, and it was just, it financially wasn't feasible. And I'm not saying just now that I'm in any different situation, but I feel that I'm able to do it, and obviously with the partnership with Stuart and the support we've got from others around us, then yeah, I'm confident that we can make a go of it this time.
And having built up such a reputation and a network within this part of the world as well now.
I'm not sure about the reputation.
Well, you do have a good reputation, I can tell you that. I think you're probably being humble, but in terms of, building out that network, this is the land of opportunity. So it's exciting time to start something yourself here in Dubai at the moment.
Yeah, no, listen, a lot of people question whether or not there's a market still in Dubai, but there is. We've been officially trading for just over a month, and we've picked up 3 projects. We've got another 5 in the pipeline already. And 2 of them are in Saudi, but all of the rest of them are all in Dubai. And you talk to developers here, and they're all looking to still try and do things with their land bank. So yeah, there's loads of opportunities here, and I guess the scope for us to grow is significant, and I'm confident that we'll do okay, and I don't think we'll need to venture too far to find the work.
Absolutely. Off camera, we also talked about some of the setbacks you've had in your career, and I think it's important that we talk about the setbacks, because sometimes when we do these podcasts, we only really double down and focus in on all of the achievements that certain guests have come, but achievement doesn't come without a foundation of somewhat failure.
Yep.
I would love for you to explain exactly what you explained to me off camera, as I said, about some of the setbacks you had with your professional accreditation, and the fact that you really stuck with that and got over the line in the end, and certainly what that experience taught you.
I thought you might ask a question about the chartership. So, I guess, did the civil engineering degree, and that was my career set essentially. And like I said earlier, the job with Bovis, where I was put onto the graduate training scheme, allowed me to get through that early stage requirements that the Institute of Civil Engineers provide to get to the qualification requirements and the experience requirements that they set before you can go through your professional review. And I remember I was actually working with Network Rail at the time, and a really good friend of mine told me one day that he was going for his review. I was like, well, I've got everything signed off. Why am I not doing this? But I didn't really, I think, acknowledge the fact that he'd probably spent at least 12 months preparing. And I thought I could just fly through it, no problem. And yeah, I did my reports. I remember reading them over and over again, thinking they were fine, submitted them, did my review, and the review response was that it was clearly a rushed submission. And when you read the reports in hindsight, you were looking at it going, yeah, okay. I think once you'd had 2 months away from not looking at something, coming in with a fresh pair of eyes, you can see it differently. So I put that behind me, and I carried on with my career. And then again, when I moved back to the UK, I was working with the engineering company. They actually had a requirement that I got chartered, and that was to allow them to get extra fee for me, essentially, as an engineer. So again, I went for it, and this time I spent a lot more time preparing. I got mentorship from ICE as well, and I was really confident with the reports. I'd had my family, friends, colleagues review them, received all the comments, and yeah, they were good reports. My failure on this occasion was at the review, because anything you put into your report is valid topic for reviewers to ask questions on. And I remember in my report, I talked about dewatering for the basement in Jumeirah Gardens, where I was working on this Park 8 project. And for me, I managed it. I was involved in it on a day-to-day basis, trying to figure out what we do to get everything in place. But unfortunately, when it came to the questioning, they were asking about the engineering principles of dewatering, and I wasn't able to answer it. So I failed on engineering understanding on that occasion. So yeah, part 2 done. And then I think I was looking to do an MBA. I decided, why am I doing this? I need to do my chartership. And I think that's where it comes back to, just that perseverance of going through and actually delivering on what you set out initially in your career. So I went for a third time, and I think by this point I'd learned all of my lessons about making sure you spend a lot of time preparing, and I made sure that my project report and experience report were not going to throw me any curveballs of questions. So yes, I was successful in my third attempt, but that took 15 years essentially, from start to finish, and very glad I got it. Definitely being a chartered engineer, whilst it's not got the same significance here in the UK, it's something that you do need for a variety of jobs. And even now, if I was to be the on-call engineer in Network Rail, I wouldn't be able to take on that job without being chartered. So yeah, at least I managed to get through it in the end.
It's not easy to study and to work full time.
No.
And I have conversations with many people that are doing that, and I've done it myself. And you're just constantly, it's 24/7, because as soon as you log off and answer all of the emails that you needed to respond to through the day, you're then cracking open the study books.
Yeah.
And you're there at the dining room table until 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then it restarts all over again. And the weekends are dedicated to your study, so it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I've not really gone through any significant studying. The chartership, obviously, it's all about preparation, and yes, there's a lot of work there. But I think even running your own business, and when I was running Colain in Scotland, I still had a job that I was committed to. So I was working maybe till midnight, trying to make sure that the housing development I was doing was being fed with materials. I was doing a refurbishment for a house in the town, and again, just making sure all of that was done. So it's challenging, and even now, obviously setting up on your own, you're constantly thinking about tomorrow and what tasks have we got to do. But I think when you see people going through that whole process of the study and the amount of time that it does take, I think you need to take your hats off to them to achieve it and get through it.
Absolutely. With all of that in mind then, what would you say are your guiding principles when it comes to your current projects and obviously the establishment of Colain?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's been some challenges along the way that kind of shapes the way in which we approach our current workload. How would you define your current guiding principles?
Well, I think people is the key thing, right? And as project managers, it's all about people, and you manage people. So the individuals you employ are, and the selection of those individuals is critical. For me, ethics is definitely something that we all need to follow, and especially in the Middle East, you hear of a lot of stories about unethical practices, and it's important that you can learn to identify them, so you know how to manage it as well. But the quality in the service that you provide is critical, and you can fly through a project, think you're managing something, but unless you've actually gone through the rigour of putting all of the right documentation in place, making sure you've got the reports throughout and the minutes are properly documented, you can get to a point where on a project, especially larger projects, where you can be in the position of having to defend a claim against a contractor. If you've not had that rigour of following correct processes and procedures, you can fall foul of the claim and ultimately cost your client a lot of money. So it's important you put a lot of effort into quality. And again, like going back to, I think, the founding principles of the new Colain, it's all about ownership, and I believe that by offering individuals ownership, you can get them to feel more part of the organisation. By doing a better service for their clients, they could potentially earn more money. But the key thing is that the clients get a better service. So we're really focused on ownership, ethics, and quality.
Being invested as an employee, not just obviously,
yeah.
Well, financially being invested in a company definitely has its perks, I think, and it drives a heightened level of commitment from a workforce.
Yeah. Like a lot of people have questioned why I'm doing that, but for me, it's the right thing to do, and I think we'll be a better company by doing that. Don't get me wrong. To do that is actually been quite complicated in terms of the company structure, but it's now set up, and hopefully it will lead to greater successes for us in the future.
Perhaps my next question then is a little bit repetitive on this, but you've held multiple different leadership roles. You were also the chair of the Dubai hub for the CIOB. How has that shaped your approach to leadership as well, having held all of those multiple positions?
I think a lot of it comes down to mentoring and development of individuals. And even before I was involved with the CIOB, when I was in Scotland, I was involved with ICE as a STEM ambassador. And I love that, where you get the opportunity to go and help kids at school or at college to understand what engineering is all about, and give them potentially an option to follow construction as a career. Moving into obviously the CIOB, when I came here, I was initially in the regional group with the CIOB, but then wanted to be a bit more directly involved, which is why I then joined the Dubai hub and ultimately became the chairperson. You meet a lot of people in the industry. You also get the opportunity to help people who maybe aren't in the fortunate position of having others within their organisation able to guide them down their chartership route. So you still get the chance to network, develop people, and obviously kind of, I think, give back to the industry in some respect. I'm not involved directly in the Dubai hub now with the CLB, but I still get involved with there's a global working group for public affairs and policy. So I'm still involved with them, and that's great because you have exposure to people of I guess similar stature who are based all around the world, and it gives you an opportunity to network internationally and learn from what their experiences are in their own countries, and understand how you can then maybe take those learnings and adopt them here. So yeah, I think the leadership's all, like, for me, it's about giving people the opportunity. I'm definitely not a micromanager. I want to see people be successful in their own right, but you need to be able to give them the right opportunity to do that.
Looking ahead then, because I think that's a really nice segue into my last question, which is really what's exciting you about the future of Middle Eastern construction and all of the opportunity that may hold?
Like clearly there's a huge focus in Saudi just now. And before we launched Colain here, I was being asked if we would be working in Saudi. And my answer was no. I want to get the company set up. I want to make sure that all of the back of house administration, processes and administration all goes to plan and works smoothly before taking another step. And needless to say, my first project was in Saudi. And yeah, I'd never been over to NEOM until just over a month ago now. And it's immense to see the amount of work which is happening in that region of Saudi. But then you bring it back to Middle East in general, and there's lots happening still, lots more events and announcements from Dubai government about their plans here are obviously leading to other people looking to invest and do the other developments. Looking from a perspective of what's going to excite me about the future, I guess taken away from what's happening here locally, I've always been a great believer on using technology to its best, to make sure that you are working as efficiently as possible using the technology that you're given. I think people are quite scared of the introduction and implementation of artificial intelligence, but really for me, it's a organic step in terms of growth from where we were using structural analysis to assess bridges or design structural elements. And as an engineer, you still need to know what the expected outputs should be. And I guess when you're using AI tools, you still need to understand what the output should be. So you can't just accept a script generated from ChatGPT and assume that you can just give that to a client. Don't get me wrong, I love ChatGPT. It can save me hours. But you've still got to make sure you read through it. You need to make sure that the context of the conversation is correct. So AI in construction is going to be really interesting, and it's definitely improving year by year. But for me, that's going to be the excitement for the future.
For sure.
Yep.
Mathew, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish yourself and Colain the very best of luck moving forwards.
Thank you so much, Madeline. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.